this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's unusual kitchen time because I'm killing several birds with one stone here. This Restrepia needs a good tidy up. I've been meaning to do it for ages and just haven't got round to it. So I'm using a couple of requests from viewers as an excuse to do it, if that makes sense. Quite a few people have asked what are the criteria for judging a plant at an orchid show. Well, that can depend a lot on which country you're in. In the UK we're governed by the British Orchid Council rules. Basically that's what we apply on our competition tables, at the Orchid Society meetings and our shows. Some of those rules are adopted in some countries in the EU, I believe. The American Orchid Society has got its own rules, and probably lots of other countries have as well, but they probably all come down to a lot of similarities. Right, so just going over the basic principles. There's two halves to the judging for a start. There's the cultivation, that gets half the points, and that's split up into sections. And then the bloom quality gets the other half of the points, and that's split up into quite a few more sections. So each of these sections has a number of points available, with a maximum obviously. So if we start with the cultivation, that's split into three sections basically. It's basically the size of the plant, that's relative to what it can be. Yeah, so what sizes can this plant grow to? How close is it from that point of view? Also within that category, which is odd, bearing in mind the other half of the points are for the bloom quality, but in the cultivation section, the plant size and condition initially gets 25% of those points. So basically 25% of 50%. That's 10 points for its size and condition. The basic cultivation, if you know what I mean, all that sort of stuff, how it's been grown, what sort of size it's capable of achieving, has it achieved that size, how close is it. So that's quite a large chunk of the points, how well it's been grown, and that makes sense in the cultivation section. That does make sense to grab the most number of points. The next section, the next set of points is 20% is for floriferousness, and I knew somebody'd get that word in there somewhere, and that's probably the only time I'm going to say it correctly, and that won't help next time. It's very late in the afternoon, I've nearly lost my light here. So we've got 25% for the cultivation, basically plant size, condition, all that sort of thing, how well it's been grown. And we've got 20%, which is 8 points out of 50, sorry, out of 20, for its floriferousness. Yeah, and then there's 5%, which is 2 points for presentation. Now, quite honestly, from my point of view, those 2 points don't sound important. They could be the difference between getting a first and a second. So they are important, even though there's only 2 of them. Presentation, that's how, you've got to bear in mind, a judge walks up to a plant, this initial view that they get, the presentation, how has it been presented to the judge? Are the blooms facing the wrong way? We don't want any of that, do we? The rules are, it should be in a black pot. Is it in a black pot? So although these points don't sound much, they can be the difference. So your presentation is important. I saw video of a show not that many days ago in the UK as well, and yes, the plants were in black pots, nice, but some of them, because they were small, were stood on upside down black pots. Those pots were dirty. Now come on. You know, if I walked up to a plant that had a black pot around it and stood on another one, and those pots had just come off the floor in the greenhouse and were still grubby, those 2 points would just go straight away. You'd lose them. You know, clean your black pots. You give them a bit of a wash and a dry off, they can shine up, they look good. And as I said, it's only 2 points, so you don't want to break your neck, but there's silly little things you can just do that are not a big deal. And then you get round to the blooms. Now the blooms is split up into quite a lot of sections. You've got the form. This is the flower form. Are the flowers the right shape? Yeah? Bearing in mind you can get slight distortions on blooms. Yeah? So the form of the blooms, that's 10%, which in fact is 4 points. And then there's the substance and the structure and the colour. All, you know, all that sort of stuff comes into it. The size of the blooms. Are they the right size for that plant? Or are they a bit undersized? Have they not grown to their full potential? That sort of thing. And there's, again, you got, come on Roger, concentrate. Right, so for the size of the blooms you've got 4 points, yeah? So that's basically another 10%. And then you've got the colour. Is the colour good for the plant? Is it a nice, you know, if this is supposed to be a deep yellow colour, is it a deep yellow or is it a bit wishy-washy? Yeah, so the actual colour, again, 10% for that, so that's another 4 points there. The substance and the texture is an odd one to judge. I would find that one particularly difficult. But then it's only 5% of the points, which is only 2. But again, that could be the 2 points. That's one I'm a little bit iffy on because I find that difficult to establish. You know, what can you say about the substance and structure of that bloom? It's as it should be. Well, how would it not be? So I find that one a little bit difficult, so I won't worry too much about that. And then we move on to the bloom spike itself. Now obviously not all orchids have got spikes. Like this little Restrepia has single blooms. Yeah, so that is still, I suppose you could call a spike, but basically the floriferousness of the spike. Now if that was say a cattleya, yeah, on that particular plant, its typical blooming spike would have say 4 or 5 blooms. Has this spike got those 4 or 5 blooms, or has it only got 2 or 3? Yeah, so for the floriferousness of the spike, basically, you know, there's another 10% there, another 4 points. And then there's the spike habit. Now that's a little bit along the presentation lines, because a lot of judges are split down the middle as to what you should do with a spike. If you think about my Laelia anceps, which has a spike over 1 metre long, well, it's not going to stick bolt upright naturally, is it? It's going to arch. It's going to arch over. So when you're giving points for the spike's habit, some judges like to see it natural. In other words, the spike has been allowed to grow naturally. And the other half are looking at the overall thing with the spike staked. And some like it that way. But, you know, it's again, it's only 5%. It's only 2 points. So, and some judges do vary in their interpretation of that. Personally, I like to see spikes arching over naturally, but you know, others don't. Others, I mean, I've seen in fact, again at that show, one of the very top plants that was there was a Paphiopedilum, and it had 3 spikes with a single bloom on, and they were staked. So one was out slightly to the right, one was slightly off centre, almost touching the one on the left. What's that all about? Didn't somebody look at that and even those 3 blooms out with the same gap between them? Come on guys, look! use your eyes. As soon as I looked at that, I thought, well, they've been staked. It's not like that's how they just ended up. Somebody'd actually put stakes in those and said, yep, that looks great. Well, no, it didn't. You know, so a bit of common sense as well. And, you know, like if you've got a cattleya with 3 or 4 spikes on, they need to be presented nicely. You don't want one tucked behind another one so that you can't see it, or you only get a glimpse of it. You've got to try and spread them nicely so that they look natural, but you can see them all. So that's that side of it. Ugh. Right, so going back then, you've got cultivation is half of the points, so out of 40 you can get 20. 10 of those points are for the plant's cultivation, size, shape, you know, colour of the leaves, clean leaves, all that sort of stuff. There again, clean your leaves before you go in. Dusty leaves, points knocked off. And that's quite a high point section. You know, the cultivation, plant size and condition. Well, condition is nice and clean and not shiny. There's a lot of judges, if you use leaf shine, they'll knock those points straight off. They hate it. So clean and tidy. You know, if you've got one old leaf that's going yellow on your cattleya, take it off. You know. So yeah. So that's 10 of the points. Floriferousness. You know, how well it's bloomed is 8 points, and then the presentation is 2 points, making a total of 20 in the cultivation section. The blooming section is geared up to the form of the flowers. Are they as they should be? 4 points. Colour, depth of colour, are they the right colour? No colour blemishes or anything like that. That's another 4 points. The bloom size, are they an appropriate size for that plant? Another 4 points. The spikes themselves, yeah, do they look good? Are they well presented? Have they got the right number of blooms on for that plant? How the hell these judges store all this up in their head? You know, you might get asked to judge a plant you've never even heard of. And then you get the substance and texture of the blooms, which is only 2 points, and that's the one I would find difficult to get in my head. And then the habit of the spike or spikes or whatever presentation the bloom form is in, another 2 points, making up the 20. So like when I come home singing my praises because I've got 36 points for one of my plants and a certificate of excellence, it's because I've got 36 of those 40 points. I only lost 4. That's the most I've ever got. But I mean, I've seen a plant at Bournemouth Orchid Society got 38. And I remember speaking to one of the guys that had judged that, and he said, do you know that nearly got 39? We had to be really strict. And I thought, you bugger, why didn't you just give it 39, you toad? Anyway, back to this one. I'm sort of thinking along the lines to here, this needs to tidy up. And let's imagine that I was going to get this ready for a show. Now this can't go in a show, it hasn't got anywhere near enough blooms on for the size of the plant, so it would get really hammered for that. But the first thing to do is get rid of any faded blooms, old spikes. Now on a Tulumnia, old spikes are these. Now on this particular Restrepia, did I say Tulumnia then? I did, didn't I? On this Restrepia, each growth, leaf, can produce many blooms. I'll try and count this particular growth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's at least a dozen blooms that have been on that growth once upon a time. They have ceased to be, and now that leaf looks nice and tidy, but it's distorted where it didn't get enough hydration in the heat. But when you come to trim a Restrepia, you'll find things like this. Now this growth has old flower spikes, it has an old kiki that's died off, and a kiki. Now if I was tidying this up, as I do want this tidy, that's an old leaf with a hole in it and a bit gone. So So we'll have that one off at the bottom. That will save tidying all those little bits up. So that's that one gone. This one here, be very careful. There's only 2 old sheaths there. There's a new bud just started. We don't want to cut the bud off, do we? I'm not going to do all of this on camera because it takes an age. Again, round here, I've got a very old growth here, sorry, not an old growth, a distorted growth here. If that was going to go in a show, that would have to come off, but it's not. So all I'm going to do is take the old spike off and leave the bud sticking out the top. So you get the idea with Restrepias. The older growths, like here, yeah, we've got an old leaf, badly discoloured, with a kiki, with old spikes on, and a distorted leaf. So that serves no purpose at all. That can come off. That's a tidy. What have we got here? Now that's not a bad leaf. It's an old one. Behind it, it's got loads of old spikes and a dyed back kiki. So just by trimming that, that's that leaf done. Round here, what have we got? We've got a kiki with a bud. Do I want to keep that? Yeah, it's not a bad leaf, but we'll get all the rubbish off behind that leaf, the older one. That tidies that up a bit. So this is the process basically. Looking at, on a Restrepia, like this growth here, the leaf has died. It's pushed out 2 little kikis, one of which got too much light. God, I thought that was bugs then. And that one's got too much light. So, you know, and loads of old spikes on it. There's no point in keeping that. That can just come off as part of the tidying process. I'm gradually working round. Now this leaf here is slightly distorted. If it was going in the show, the leaf would probably have to come off. But at the moment, I'm just taking the tatty bits off. As I said, this isn't going in the show. And I think the easiest thing I can do is I'll shut the camera off now. I'll get rid of the manky leaves, the ones that have got to come off, and all of these little straggly bits, and then we'll come back and have another look at it. Okay, that's a sort of run around with the scissors. Old leaves with holes in, discoloured leaves, leaves that are starting to die off, all that sort of thing. Just trim all that off, yeah? You were going to do it at some point anyway. If you didn't do it, they'd fall off. Old leaves and all that. I left a couple with kikis on the grounds that a happy Restrepia will extend its growths and produce new ones, and they're capable of rooting. That's its natural way of growing. Some of them, not all of them. So that for this particular species is quite natural. So I left a couple on. A couple of buds got nipped off with the scissors. As far as blooming is concerned on this plant, this is not a show plant. There's nowhere near enough blooms for a plant this size. Nonetheless, it's a good sized plant. Now the next trick, and it is a trick, is when you choose your black pot, yeah, when you've got leaves that hang down like that, by careful choice, see now if that pot was a little bit deeper it would have worked better. But if you can find a pot that's wider than the pot you're trying to put it in and relatively deep, as the edges of the black pot come up, they do that. It makes the plant look an awful lot nicer than straggling all over the edges, and you've done nothing. You haven't cheated, all you've done is think. Yeah? So by choosing the right size black pot, you can ease your leaves upwards. Yeah? If you can get quite a deep pot that's just a bit bigger than your own pot, and then you can lower your pot into it and judge the depth it needs to be, and put a rock in there or something, put something in the bottom of the deep black pot to hold your pot at the right height to get the leaves how you want them, and that would look better with those leaves a little bit more clustered together. Would look more like a nice compact plant. So anyway, that's the point system. That's what we're all up against, and yeah, I don't know, just it's not really tips. A lot of people never get near an orchid society. Some can't even get to a show. and many would never put a plant in a show anyway. But I have been asked several times, you know, the thoughts that go into a plant, getting a plant ready for a show. Now the next thing to do with this, if it was going in the show, would be clean the leaves. They're dusty. If I wet my thumb, run it over that leaf, looks a lot better. That dries quickly because it's warm in here. But yeah, that automatically just looks better. If all of the leaves had that done, the plant would look better. So with a little bit of preparation and a bit of thought and a bit of planning sometimes, because if you've got a plant that's got 3 or 4 spikes that are going to arch over in all directions, it's going to be difficult handling it, transporting it, and if it's going to go in a display or on a competition table with other plants, those spikes are going to get jumbled up with other people's pots. So planning ahead, you might want to think about staking those spikes and allowing them to gently arch but not arch right over. Yeah, planning ahead. So I mean, we've got some growers at Bournemouth, I could name them but I won't, who grow to show. Their sole purpose in life seems to be to show their plants. From the moment a bit of green pokes its nose out from the base of a plant, they're working on it. Right, what direction do I want that to go in? Yeah, if I put some cardboard there and block the light and move it there, it will grow in that direction. And then as it starts to grow, I need to move it up slightly to get it in line with the others. That level of detail some of them go to. As far as I'm concerned, I like my plants to just grow how they grow. And some do well, some don't do so good. But this Restrepia, as I say, this is a species, it's Falkenbergii, and it's the one I've had the longest. And if I can move the important stuff out of the way, that's what's just come off of it. That's half the plant. Now most of those leaves weren't going to last much longer. They were distorted, yeah, or old, dying, holes in them, discoloured due to light. So it's made the plant look a lot tidier, but it's now a lot smaller. Now to a degree that might be a little bonus, because that will let a little bit more light into the base of the plant where all these old tatty leaves were, and some new growths will probably start. So we'll get some nice shiny new green leaves which will then move on to bloom. But this one is a, you know, I mean, if you look at the number of spikes there's been, another little tip as well if you're going to grow Restrepias that do this, if they put a kiki out, you've got tatty old flower spikes, you've also got roots. They are different. Those are the roots that go with that kiki, which enables it to be taken off and planted. So if you have a mind to actually take some of your kikis off, don't cut all the roots off thinking they're dead flower spikes, like what these are. Yeah? They are different. The live roots are a white with a more greenish colour. But then, so are the flower spikes when they're new. That particular growth has bloomed quite a bit recently. The spikes are still white. Yeah? So you need to learn a bit about your plants, get used to what they do, and what the new bits look like, and what the bits you want to keep look like, so that you can work out which bits you don't want to keep and don't cut the wrong bits off. 3 or 4 buds came off snipping those tatty bits off. They'll grow again. I mean, this hasn't got a lot of blooms, but I mean, there's a couple of buds to open there, bloom there, another one there, one hiding down in there, little tiny one, probably didn't get enough light. And then we've got some more buds around this side. That is an old bloom actually, you can come off. That's an old one. So, you know, it's got some blooms on, but that's not a lot of blooms for a plant that size. So, but these bloom on and off year in, year out. They don't have a season, they just bloom when they're good and ready, quite honestly. And it seems that once you get a good sized growth with a nice leaf on it that's bloomed, it'll just keep going. And the larger the leaf and the stronger the growth, the more frequently those blooms will come out, and to a degree they might be a bit bigger as well, because it's got the growth itself has got some strength in it. So there we go, a tidy up and a talk about the point system as far as the British Orchid Council are concerned. I know some other countries have adopted exactly the same point system, and most others have something incredibly similar. But as I said, it's once you know the allocation of the points, you can work on the sections that you can improve. Yeah, like plant size and condition. Well, you can't alter your plant size, can you? It's as it is. But you can alter the view of its condition by making sure your leaves are clean, making sure canes and pseudobulbs have a nice aspect to them. You know, even if it does mean a little stake. And if you're going to put a stake on a cane or a pseudobulb, you'll eventually decide which is the front of my plant. Don't stick the stake in front of the cane or the pseudobulb, put it round the back so that the main judge's view doesn't see the canes. Trust me, they'll know they're there, but they'll mark you down if you haven't taken enough care to even bother trying to hide them from view. It's all about preparation. So that's a go at that then. I've been meaning to do that for a while, both tidy up that plant and have a chat about show points. But show preparation, get your plant looking as good as it can. Don't get sloppy. You know, you got 3 nice canes and 1 hanging out the side. Well, try and straighten it up a bit. Same with pseudobulbs. You know, you should try and get a nice balanced look to the plant. And again, with spikes, if you've got more than 1 spike, try and get them evenly balanced so that they make a nice shape to the overall outline of the plant. It's no good saying this is the best view of my plant and having 2 spikes sticking out to the right and nothing out to the left or up the middle. The presentation's wrong. So just look at your plants, take a step back, have a good look, and make sure your leaves are clean. And things like cattleyas, those type of plants, getting those old sheaths off helps. Especially if you only do it a few days before the show, because underneath those tatty old woody looking sheaths is a lovely shiny green pseudobulb, and it'll hold its shine for quite a while. It's a trick, you know, that's not how they would naturally look. But judges like the fact that you've put some effort in. Yeah, and as I say, those odd couple of points could be the difference between a first, a second and a third, or nothing at all. So it's worth a little bit of effort if you're going to bother going and putting plants into the show. So there we go. Blimey, it's nearly do you know what? It's nearly 4:45 and it's nowhere near dark yet. This is one of the first sunny days I can remember where it's been sunny at this time of day. You know, at sundown basically. Oh, that's good. I can start turning my lights on in the grow room a bit later in the afternoon. I'll save a bit of money. Not a lot. See you next time. Bye for now.